Under the bright lights of a congressional hearing, a simple question turned into a national spectacle. A top government official, calm, polished, and confident, suddenly froze when asked something every public servant should easily answer: did you register as a foreign agent? What followed wasn't just awkward, it was explosive. You could feel the tension rise as Attorney General Pam Bondi, once celebrated for her fierce defense of justice, stumbled through explanations that left the entire room questioning what she might be hiding. Cameras caught every second, and the silence between her words said more than her answers ever could. Because when the nation's top legal officer dodges a question about ethics, it's not just about paperwork, it's about trust, power, and whether the people protecting the law are truly playing by it.
The three hallmarks of this administration are incompetence, corruption, and cruelty. I'm going to focus today on corruption. And in my mind, there are two types of corruption: personal, and then the other I'm going to call public, governmental. Attorney General, have you ever been registered as an agent of a foreign principal under the Foreign Agents Registration Act?
I assume you're talking about when I represented the country of Qatar for a very short time.
Hold on. No,
hold on.
excuse me.
No.
No.
For anti-human trafficking for the World Cup. Anti-human trafficking
or
for the
no?
World Cup.
Attorney
you can't
General,
put words in my mouth.
No.
You want to talk about incompetence? You're the one that
Excuse
said
me.
Joe Biden on PBS was competent. You had to retract those words.
Mr.
So don't
Chairman,
talk to me. Don't insult me publicly.
this is so discourteous. This is so outside the committee's guidelines. Taking a personal shot at me while swiping at Biden, very strange and very unprofessional of you. The answer is yes or no, and the answer is yes. You were registered as a lobbyist for Qatar. Is that correct? Yes. Never mind, don't answer. Did you disclose that when you went before for the Senate for confirmation? Yes or no? No, it was not in your documents. The answer is no. President Trump.
This was discussed at my confirmation hearings in detail.
It was discussed, but you failed to bring up the conflict that you had. President Trump recently announced he'd accept that $400 million Qatar airplane because it was just prettier than the one he was flying around in. Is it true that you gave advice that this was legally permissible? Yes or no?
I will not discuss any advice that my Office of Legal Counsel gives to the President of the United States on any matter.
When you spoke before the Senate, you said you would ask for ethical advice. Did you recuse yourself from that issue?
And talking about unprofessional, you say the President wanted a jet because it's pretty?
Excuse
Come
me.
on, this is a Senate, this is
He
a
said it
congressional
himself.
hearing.
He said it himself. Let me go to April the 2nd. You're a part of this, the president has dabbled in meme coin. He had the DOJ, disband the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team. His son recently launched the Executive Branch Club, a private club with $500,000 memberships here in D.C. Any of this seem like it might be a problem, might be profiteering from the office, and maybe you and your ethics team might be concerned about these conflicts of interest, your own and the president and his family? Yes or no? Any concerns?
What I would be concerned about in Pennsylvania are all the child sex cases that we've prosecuted, all the CSAM cases that we've prosecuted.
Did you hear
in
my question?
Pennsylvania.
I
That's
asked
what
the
I would
witness
be
to
concerned
actually
about.
answer questions that are asked.
Congresswoman Dean.
Chairman,
Please let the witness answer the question.
she didn't. And I would like to ask you one more question. You're not just complicit in this, you're actively helping and profiting. Isn't it true that on April the 2nd, the same day that Trump announced his chaotic tariff regime that plummeted the stock market, you sold more than $1 million worth of your shares in Trump Media stock? Trump Media stock fell 13% in the following days. Seems you avoided that loss. Well done. I yield back.
May I answer that, Chairman? I complied with my ethics, and yeah, I would take a class in financial literacy if you think I profited from that, because I lost a tremendous amount of money. Congresswoman, and also, On page 25 of my SJ2, it lists my involvement with Qatar for anti-human trafficking for the World Cup. Thank you.
But the confrontation that unfolded next, no one saw that coming. Representative Madeleine Dean leaned in, voice sharp, eyes locked. Have you ever been registered as an agent of a foreign principal? Bondi hesitated. The pause alone was enough to make headlines. After a moment that felt like eternity, she finally muttered, I assume you're talking about when I represented the country of Qatar for a very short time, for anti-human trafficking, for the World Cup. Her words hung in the air, technical, deflective, and incomplete. Dean pressed again, yes or no. Bondi, now visibly irritated, fired back that her work had been misunderstood. But by then the damage was done. The exchange wasn't just tense, it was revealing. Because at that moment, everyone watching realized this wasn't about a single project, it was about transparency. And what came next would turn the hearing from tense to volcanic. Dean didn't back off. She pointed out that Bondi's name had appeared as a registered lobbyist for Qatar, yet she never mentioned that connection during her Senate confirmation. Did you disclose that when you appeared before the Senate? Dean asked. Yes or no? The Attorney General's face stiffened. She didn't answer. Dean continued. The answer is no. It wasn't in your documents. The silence was deafening. This was more than a personal jab, it was a statement. The law known as the Foreign Agents Registration Act, or FARA, requires anyone working for a foreign government or interest to disclose that relationship. It exists for one reason, so the American people know whose interests are being represented inside their government. When that disclosure doesn't happen, it isn't a minor oversight, it's a direct strike against the foundation of public trust. Bondi tried to reframe her involvement, calling it humanitarian work tied to the World Cup. But even if that were true, Dean's point still stood. Disclosure isn't optional. The official in charge of enforcing ethics laws appeared to have skirted one herself, and then, just when the room started to cool, Dean hit her with the next blow. President recently announced he'd accepted a $400 million aircraft from Qatar because, quote, it was prettier than the one he was using. Dean said, is it true you advised that this was legally permissible? The Attorney General's response was a masterclass in evasion. I will not discuss any advice that my office gives the President of the United States. In an instant, the hearing transformed into a theater of power. What began as a question about a foreign lobbying disclosure now spiraled into a conversation about influence, money, and whether ethical boundaries still meant anything in Washington. Dean didn't let up. When you went before the Senate, you promised to ask for ethical advice, she said. Did you recuse yourself from that issue? The frustration on Bondi's face was obvious. She fired back that it was unprofessional to accuse her of bias over something so trivial, but that only deepened the unease. The word recuse had hung heavy in recent political history, tied to officials who stepped aside to avoid conflicts of interest. Bondi's refusal to do so, or even to admit whether she had, only added to the storm. But Dean wasn't finished. She pivoted fast. You know the president has dabbled in meme coins. His son recently launched a private club with $500,000 memberships, and you disbanded the DOJ's National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team. Any of this seem like a problem? Profiteering from public office, your own or theirs? It was the kind of question that can't be answered without fallout. Bondi didn't even try. Instead, she deflected entirely. What I would be concerned about in Pennsylvania are all the child exploitation cases we've prosecuted. That's when the room broke. Lawmakers protested. Answer the question. Dean shouted. But Bondi's silence spoke volumes. The moment revealed something far larger than just one clash. It was a snapshot of what happens when ethics, politics, and personal interest collide in plain sight. Because while the public hears words like disclosure, recusal, and foreign registration, what they're really about is power, who holds it, who influences it, and who benefits from it. Dean's final question hit like a thunderclap. Isn't it true that on April 2nd, the same day the administration announced its chaotic tariff plan that sent markets plunging, you sold more than $1 million of your own Trump media stock? The stock fell 13% days later. Seems like you avoided that loss. Well done. Gasps filled the chamber. Bondi finally asked to respond, voice rising. I complied with all ethics requirements. I actually lost money, a tremendous amount, Congresswoman. Check page 25 of my financial disclosure, it's all listed there. But by that point, the hearing wasn't about the numbers, it was about the optics. The idea that the country's top law enforcement officer might have dumped stock the same day her own administration made an announcement that would tank the market wasn't just suspicious, it was explosive. Because sometimes, the appearance of impropriety is just as damaging as the act itself. Dean ended her questioning with a line that cut deeper than any accusation. You're not just complicit in this, you're profiting from it. The air in the room went heavy. Bondi's face hardened. She held her ground, insisting she had done nothing wrong, but the exchange had already gone viral, replayed, clipped, analyzed frame by frame, and no matter how many times Bondi said she'd followed the rules, one truth echoed louder than any defense: transparency only works when it's total. And this didn't look like transparency. The hearing laid bare the uncomfortable truth about power in Washington, that ethics laws mean little if those who write and enforce them can interpret them as they please. Bondi's evasions didn't prove guilt, but they did reveal something almost as troubling: a comfort with opacity, a willingness to operate in the gray areas the public can't easily see. That's the danger of political immunity. Once the public stops expecting accountability, those in power stop feeling obligated to provide it. Bondi's defenders argued that the whole line of questioning was political theater. They claimed she'd been transparent enough, that her Qatar work was public, and that her stock sales were routine. But critics saw a pattern, one that connects influence, self-interest, and the slow erosion of ethical norms. And that's where this story really hits. Because when top officials dismiss ethics questions as unprofessional, they're not just avoiding criticism, they're normalizing secrecy. What happens when the rules meant to keep the powerful honest become suggestions instead of laws? When the people meant to guard integrity start playing word games to protect themselves? That's when democracy starts to blur around the edges. Think about it, every hearing like this, every evasive answer, every "I can't discuss that," it chips away at something vital. Public faith, the belief that government, at its core, serves the people, not the powerful. And while one ethics form might seem minor, the pattern it reveals isn't. Because if officials can selectively disclose, deflect, and dismiss, what else can they conceal? That's the real story here. Not a single lobby registration, not one stock sale, but a system where evasion has become an art form, and where transparency only exists when convenient. The exchange between Dean and Bondi will likely be forgotten by the next news cycle, replaced by the next controversy, the next headline. But what it represents shouldn't be. It's a warning that accountability only survives when citizens demand it. Because if those in power aren't afraid to dodge questions under oath, imagine what they're comfortable doing when the cameras aren't rolling. And here's the uncomfortable truth: in today's political climate, silence isn't just strategy, it's survival. Bondi may have lost her composure for a moment, but the bigger loss wasn't hers, it was ours. The erosion of trust in the very institutions built to uphold justice. The next time you watch a hearing like this, don't just listen to the answers, watch the pauses, the half smiles, the shifts in tone. Those are the moments that tell the real story, and maybe that's why this clip keeps spreading, not because it's scandalous, but because it reminds us how fragile transparency really is. If the top attorney in the country can't give straight answers on basic ethics, what message does that send to everyone below her? Ethics in government isn't a formality, it's a promise that no one is above scrutiny. But promises mean nothing without honesty. So ask yourself, if the people in power can't even be honest under oath, how much of what they say outside those hearings can we truly believe? That's why this moment matters. Because accountability isn't just about catching corruption, it's about preventing it. And once public trust breaks, rebuilding it is nearly impossible. So the next time a headline flashes across your screen about ethics concerns or conflicts of interest, don't scroll past it. That's not noise, it's the sound of democracy testing its own limits. Because as this hearing proved, even the smallest lie, the quietest omission, can shake the foundations of public faith. And if that doesn't concern us all, it should. If you found this breakdown helpful, and believe transparency still matters, hit that like button right now. It helps more people see what's really going on behind the headlines. Subscribe for more hard-hitting political breakdowns like this, and share this video to keep the conversation alive. Because the truth doesn't disappear, it just waits for someone to ask the right question.